Live from our Seton Hill University studios, this is Westmoreland on the Gridiron on the Westmoreland Sports Network. Here's your host, Sean Meyers.
Welcome into another special playoff edition of Westmoreland on the Gridiron here on the Westmoreland Sports Network. Sean Meyers, Dan Flickinger coming to you from Seton Hill on opposite sides of the table.
Yeah, we had to change things up. We needed better luck this week.
Yeah, absolutely. It was certainly not a banner week for Westmoreland County football teams. We'll talk all about that. We have a jam-packed show once again. We will update the brackets 6A through 1A. We'll look at the top performers from the first week of the playoffs, and we will have interviews with three Westmoreland County football coaches: John Ruane of Penn Trafford, Matt Humbert leading Bell Vernon area, and Jason Fazekas of the Mount Pleasant area Vikings. And Fazekas, the only coach from Westmoreland County who earned a victory this past week. Westmoreland County teams going just 1-6. And Flick, unfortunately, it was not the result we were hoping for. Really a tough start to the postseason for our teams.
Yeah, it was. I don't know that there were a lot of shocking games. You know, Southmoreland, you thought that maybe they'd be able to compete a little bit better, you know, playing their first ever playoff game at home against, you know, an East Allegheny team that I thought they matched up decently against, but obviously give credit to EA. They took it to them. We thought that Mount Pleasant would probably get that victory over Burrell, although, you know, with the way that Sean Liotta was talking before the game, kind of thought that game might be a little bit closer than it turned out to be. Ligonier Valley and Southside, another game that, you know, you kind of thought that maybe it would be, you know, a little bit closer, even though Southside was favored. And then, boy, what Greensburg Central Catholic went through during the week, and then not playing without 5 starters or whatever it was. I mean, that was just almost an impossible game for the Centurions to win.
Yeah, let's run down the scores from our Westmoreland County teams. Again, there were 7 teams that played last week. 2 who earned byes that had a rare night off, that being the Penn Trafford Warriors, the number 2 seed in 5A, and the number 1 seed in the 4A bracket, the Bell Vernon area Leopards. And again, we'll hear from their head coaches. They got a nice relaxing Friday where they got to sit back and watch the action. The other Westmoreland County teams that were in action, however, in 5A, Penn Hills defeats Franklin Regional 38-6. So the season ends with a 3-8 mark for Franklin Regional under the guidance of their first-year head coach Lance Getze. Mount Pleasant area, as we mentioned, 41-7 defeats Burrell. So the Buccaneers also finish at 3-8. Mount Pleasant moves on to the quarterfinals. We'll talk about that matchup against Avonworth upcoming. East Allegheny 36, Southmoreland 11. The Scotties finish at 7-4. They did get their first ever playoff points, however, after being shut up the prior 2 times. Southside Beaver defeats Ligonier Valley 34-14. So the Rams, despite 8 wins this season, the Ligonier Valley Rams, I should say, despite 8 wins this season, they have no longer a football season in front of them. They did get in the playoffs for the first time, however. That's a banner accomplishment for a team in its second year back in the WPIAL. Our Lady of the Sacred Heart 28-8 over Greensburg Central Catholic. Centurions finish at 6-5, and Cornell beats up on Monessen 33-0. So the Greyhounds finish at 4-7. And a closer look at some of these games. We mentioned, obviously, Mount Pleasant area moving on. I thought the thing that stood out in that game is they did it without their starting quarterback, Tyler Reese. I did not anticipate that he was going to miss that game. It wasn't something that Coach Fazekas had mentioned. So they call upon a freshman in Cole Chatfield. He didn't have to do a lot, but he did enough in the ground game. As always, that was the biggest key. They had not just Robbie Labuda, Aaron Alexson, and really no answer for Burrell in terms of defensively.
Yeah, even when Tyler Reese plays, obviously Mount Pleasant is a running team. And Tyler, though, you know, he brings that extra element of being able to run the football and being able to throw it a little bit. But you got to give credit to Chatfield coming in as a young player, very young player to start in a WPIAL playoff game. That is pretty wild there. Hopefully, Tyler, I don't know what the injury is. Hopefully he can play this week. I know he was banged up earlier in the year as well and missed a little bit of time and came back.
And it did not go well without him the first time.
No, I think, was that against Greensburg-Salem?
They were kind of overmatched, but I think you see, a young quarterback, his first start, it did not go how he wanted, but he gets another opportunity, and he was really the beneficiary of a great running game as well. That makes every quarterback's job easier. But we have to give a shout-out on the other side to Caden DiCaprio.
Caden DiCaprio, my gosh.
Nearly 50 carries.
He's still sore today, I think.
Yeah, and that's a Buccaneers team that we knew they were going to be underdogs. Thought that maybe it would be a little bit better showing because they had some momentum. I know Coach Liotta said that afterwards there were some injuries that complicated some issues. But one thing you could count on, whether it be the first game of the season or the last, Caden DiCaprio was going to run hard, and he was going to run until he was absolutely exhausted.
And the fact that he's been so durable all season for Burrell says something about him. I mean, yeah, I know guys can get injured when it's no fault to themselves. But there also has to be something said for guys that can stay healthy. And DiCaprio, despite, 47 carries last week, obviously he stayed healthy through the first 40. So he still had those extra 7. Just absolutely mind-boggling to see how many carries that, he had in a few games this year. But Burrell thought, hey, this is our best chance. Give credit to Caden DiCaprio, rushed for almost 200 yards. But the Vikings really took control of the game early, ran out to a 14-0 lead. The same culprits, Robbie Labuda scored a touchdown. Aaron Alexson scored a touchdown early to put the Vikings ahead fairly quickly there. And even though Burrow was able to kind of answer back and make it a close game, initially, the Vikings really went into halftime with a pretty big edge.
Another 3A game we mentioned before, Southmoreland falling at home. And we had a number of the 8 versus 9 matchups involving our Westmoreland County teams. And you typically think those will be the most competitive games. Those are kind of pick'ems. Now, even though the Scotties were at home as the number 8 seed, not much separation between them and East Allegheny in the WPIAL committee's mind. But on the field, it certainly favored the Wildcats. And I know Coach Kiefer afterwards said, we have not seen team speed like East Allegheny all season long. Remember, they played against Elizabeth Forward, and they're saying we have not seen team speed. And Dom Pecora, it was a bit of a homecoming for him. He knows all about Southmoreland. He said afterwards that it was maybe one of the best performances his team has ever played, and that goes back a long time for his coaching career. So it's sort of a perfect storm in favor of East Allegheny, and unfortunately for Southmoreland, they were on the wrong side of it.
Yeah, I mentioned at the beginning of the program that, the hope was that Southmoreland was able to match up against East Allegheny, but then when you actually watched the game and saw the tremendous speed that EA displayed in that game, kind of showed that maybe Southmoreland wouldn't be able to match up with EA on this night, and they certainly weren't able to do so. Give credit to Anthony Govern, scores the first touchdown in Southmoreland playoff history. Is that correct?
Yeah, apparently they had not cracked the scoreboard. Now, we remember back in 2019, but you have to go back, I think, to the 1970s for their prior playoff game before that. I didn't remember that one. Certainly. Michael Smith, quarterback for EA, had a terrific showing. So that's a Wildcats team that now moves on, and quite frankly, we'll get to the brackets. It's not going to be any easier.
Yeah, I was going to say, them. EA needs to have a lot of speed for their next opponent. Of course, that's top-seeded Central Valley.
Yes. Another 8-9 matchup. It was Ligonier Valley. They were playing as the number 9 seed, and the difference is they had to make the long trek across western Pennsylvania to Beaver County to play Southside Beaver. And you mentioned that a game sort of turned early for Mount Pleasant against Burrell. Well, this one really turned early as the Southside Beaver Rams scored twice in the first 2 minutes. And this one really surprised me. I would have picked Ligonier Valley, a team that wasn't fully healthy, but certainly had gotten healthy down the stretch, was on a 3-game winning streak. Ultimately, they just never seemed to get on track. They couldn't stop the running game of Southside Beaver. And I think maybe not having Hayden Siraki at quarterback in this one maybe cost them a little bit. I know Broderick Schreier put up some decent numbers, but he was clearly not quite the same athlete and threat that Siraki was. And even though Hayden Siraki was able to play, he was not able to play quarterback after he came back. Unfortunate way for Ligonier Valley to end with a really impressive regular season. You go back and remember the victories against Indiana,
Elizabeth
Forward, but in the end just couldn't get it done, could not get their first win in the WPIAL postseason.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned during last week's show that, when Hayden Siraki's in there at quarterback, throwing the football, running the football, I think he just makes such a huge difference because defenses have to scheme for that. They have to account for him, his ability to be able to do a number of different things offensively. And when you don't have him in there, I think it obviously does hurt you. But, by the same token, I will say this, Ligonier Valley's trailing 21-0. They cut the game to 21-14, yep. Sean. So their offense was able to do something there, cut it to 21-14. So, when you look at the final score of 34-14, their offense didn't do enough. But defensively, like you mentioned, not being able to stop the run, I think that may have played a bigger part. Than Hayden Siraki not being able to play quarterback. But, I give a lot of credit to Ligonier because it was a 28-14 game before about midway through the fourth quarter. Southside added that extra touchdown to make it maybe look a little worse than it was. But I give credit to the Rams because they kept battling. They cut it to 21-14, but unfortunately they couldn't quite come all the way back and get a victory. But I think really good steps in terms of them joining the WPIAL, making the playoffs now, and having a good season. You look at their record.
Yeah, Parker Statler just really unstoppable for Southside Beaver. Keep in mind that we're talking about Siraki, but there were some other big injuries. Miles Higgins was out. He was a terrific player. And then Harbert, who came out of nowhere. It was his first year playing football. He was
Roger
so
Beidel
good.
was so excited about him.
He was such a dynamic player. I think he had like 15 tackles in his first ever game. They lost him to injury about midway through the season. So when you're a team like Ligonier Valley that doesn't have a massive roster, you need pretty much everyone healthy to have success in the postseason. Unfortunately for them, their season is now over. As is the case for Greensburg Central Catholic. And I remember seeing them against the Clairton Bears and saying, if they have everyone at their disposal, they can hang.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for them, they knew they weren't going to have 5 key players for the postseason. And really, to me, the game is secondary. And I know we're going to talk about the final score, Our Lady of the Sacred Heart 28 and Greensburg Central Catholic 8. But the fact that the team was able to go out and even play a game was miraculous in its own right. For those who did not see, 2 assistant coaches both died prior to the game. One happened the prior Sunday and another one on just a day before the game. Joseph Oslowski and B.J. Farrell. And just really tragic. Both were in their 40s. They both had been assistants for Marco Thomas going back to his Connellsville days. One of them was even a high school teammate at Penn Trafford. So it was tragic for Greensburg Central Catholic. I think I talked to John Ruane. He knew Joseph Oslowski as well. I think for all of Westmoreland County, it's just it puts a lot of things in perspective, right? Because they go out and try to play a football game. They lost. But again, win or lose, it wasn't going to be about the final score for the football game on Friday for GCC.
No, absolutely not. And I thought it was an incredibly classy move by Olsch to, in both teams really, to agree to walk out together at Hempfield last week. They walked out together, and then only 5 offensive linemen for Greensburg Central Catholic came out before the opening play. That was it on offense. Just 5 offensive linemen. They stood over the football. They took a delay game penalty to kind of honor their coaches who coached the line. And then Olsch declined the penalty, which I thought was just such a classy move for both teams. And they knew that it was more than just football. And Sean, I know you'll echo this, but I definitely want to send our condolences out to the family of Joe Oslowski and also B.J. Farrell. Not only their family, but also their football family at GCC and Connellsville and Penn Trafford and, just in Westmoreland County for just such a tragic loss. And, last week when you interviewed Marco, you kind of thought something was going on because he did say we got some bad news. We weren't sure what it was. And then our colleague Bill Beckner had put the report out there, and I sent a text message to Bill, and he said it was just really hard to even write that story. It was incredibly difficult to even write it. And then he said, how football is secondary. So, again, our condolences out to the GCC family. And, the Centurions, I thought they battled hard, but, again, they were just so undermanned and just probably not in a great emotional state in that game.
Right, and it was a very close game at the half. The defense had done its job, but, when you go back to the players that were out, Jaden Kennedy, and they also had Danny DeLugos out due to injury, not as a result of a transfer. So you're down your top 2 running backs, and you lose one of your best linemen in Ryan Kimmel. And I thought Keontae Robinson was maybe their best defensive player when I saw them against the Clairton Bears. So you take him out of the mix. Tyshawn Jamison was good as well, and then Hill was another guy that they used in the secondary defensively. It would have been hard for them to beat any team in the playoffs down that many. But you go against an Our Lady of the Sacred Heart team that's pretty competitive, that's played for championships in recent years, that has an accomplished head coach in Coach Bradley. So ultimately, when you factor everything in, it's an understandable loss. But again, even if they had won, it just would have been so secondary to everything that happened. So an unfortunate way for GCC's football season to end. And certainly I think everyone now, okay, you think, okay, the season's over, but I believe Marco Thomas said they are still going to get together and they're going to kind of have the proper send-off to everyone to mourn together, but also maybe think about the positive memories that they have of their two coaches that have unfortunately passed away. The other game we mentioned, Cornell defeating Monessen. Just for getting to the postseason, you have to give credit to the Greyhounds. They finished 4-7, but remember, you go back to 2020. It did not look like they were even going to have a program potentially going forward. That's a really good Cornell team as the number 2 seed. And the other one that I sort of glossed over earlier, I do want to circle back. Franklin Regional, Unfortunately, they lost to Penn Hills, but it was a Panthers team that really battled, especially defensively in the first half. Now, it was ultimately the Duggar brothers that they did not have an answer for. Julian, the quarterback, found his brother Jaden 4 times for touchdowns.
Jeez, that's ridiculous.
That's a really, really good Penn Hills team that I think will have a legitimate chance to potentially knock off Gateway this upcoming week. But for Franklin Regional, I think you could say getting to the playoffs was a major step. And I wasn't sure in terms of the health of their players. I know Caden Smith and Aiden Hudock were both kind of questionable going into that game. I don't know if they played or if they did. Certainly were not at full.
I think Caden Smith did, but I don't think Hudock.
Yeah,
I don't think Hudock did.
There's no way that without everyone 100%, Franklin Regional is going to have a tough time against Penn Hills. But the fact that they forced some turnovers early, they kept the game close. You don't want to go into a game and then have it be decided in the first 3 or 4 minutes. And that certainly wasn't the case. I know it kind of got away from them in the second half, and they maybe didn't have the firepower. But I think for Coach Getsy, 3-8 record is not going to look pretty, but it was a step to get to the postseason because in his first year, now they can build upon that.
Yeah, and I think the players can be proud of their effort with the way that they battled against Penn Hills, and you mentioned causing turnovers. I mean, those are effort plays. When you cause turnovers, typically, that's because of great effort from your defense. And obviously, Franklin Regional got that last week. I'm sure Coach Getsy, was very proud of that. Not proud of the final record, as you mentioned, Sean, at 3-8, but maybe some building blocks this year to try to get the Panthers back to a playoff, not only a playoff contender, but one that can, do some damage in the playoffs in a very tough 5A classification. Connor Donnelly, who had some ups and downs this year, got the only touchdown in that game. Well, Roman Sarnik, he threw it to him on a 23-yard touchdown pass. But again, the Panthers played tough early. Penn Hills ends up pulling away, but I think there's some things that they can be proud of. And you mentioned the Duggar brothers. My fantasy football strategy this year, Sean, I got Tyreek Hill first.
Okay.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go after Patrick Mahomes in like the next round, or I think he might have been available at round 3. Maybe it was round 2. That way, you kind of get double the points. They're going to put up huge numbers every week, right? Well,
it could go the other way,
not
too.
so much. I should have drafted the Duggar brothers, I think, because those guys put up a bunch of points last week. But what's going on, Patty Mahomes? He's struggling, man. Well, even though they did win last week,
They still got the win against Green Bay.
As long as they got the dub.
And so, final thought here on Franklin Regional. You go back and you look at early in the season, some of the losses were good losses when you really look at it. They defeated Plum by 30 points. That's a Plum team that made some noise and nearly pulled off a bit of a stunner
last week.
In 4A. They lose by 10 to Kiski area, a team that started 5-0. They lost to Hempfield by 2. That's a 6A team, so they're playing up. And then look at this. They lost 4 points against Fox Chapel. By the way, Fox Chapel is now in the quarterfinals. Yeah. They lost by 2 scores to Bethel Park, a team that made a run to the playoffs again. So, really, and they played fairly competitive against Woodland Hills, which, by the way, the Wolverines won. So you look at the losses, and for the most part, they were in just about every game. Now, the 2 at the end of the regular season, PT and Gateway, those got out of hand. But other than that, I think they were competitive in all of their losses, and they were to some really good teams. So there's a lot to build on for Franklin Regional, certainly. That does it for the rundown of the scores from high school football. I do want to touch on a couple of college scores, and unfortunately, they were not in favor of our local teams. IUP 38, Seton Hill 3. So the Crimson Hawks, as always, an impressive showing. They are now 6-3. Seton Hill falls to 4-6. And I know that you were sort of watching en route to Penn State. Yeah. Really, this one I think you could say maybe was the most disappointing showing of the season for the Griffins. They were in and competitive in just about every game, and I think Slippery Rock and Cal U maybe got overwhelmed a little bit. Yeah. But this IUP team wasn't as good as some past years, and Seton Hill just never got it going offensively, and they gave up far too many big plays defensively.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you play Slippery Rock, Cal U, or IUP, the big 3, right, in the PSAC West, and they're all very good teams, you got to get off to a good start. They did so against Slippery Rock. They were leading 7-0, and then things got away from them. 2 weeks ago against Cal U, they did not get off to a good start, but you're also saying, okay, this is a Cal U team. They're playing at home. They're the 4th-ranked team in the country. A lot of things went bad at the beginning of the game, and it snowballed. They played better as the game went on. So, you could kind of say, okay, we'll kind of look at the positives in that one. But last week, man, they're going up against an IUP team, as Sean mentioned, that is reeling. They just had their top cornerback quit. They had starting defensive tackle out. Of course, Irv Charles just came back to the lineup, but he didn't play the previous week against Edinboro. That was certainly a big addition for sure for IUP. But, I know that Dan Day was very excited about this game, and he's excited about every game, really, because he's bubbling with optimism all the time, and that's awesome about him. But he literally thought that they had a chance to win this game. It was very winnable, and they lost 38-3. I mean, that has to be really disappointing.
Yeah, certainly it is. And you mentioned a loss against Cal U. Well, that's really a game lost in about a 10-minute stretch. And if you take that out, you could say they played even the rest of the way. Now, it doesn't work like that. But I don't think that even if you take any stretch of the IUP game out, that the outcome would be much different.
Yeah,
I thought,
on senior day, too, at home, it was just a very surprising showing.
Start to finish in all phases, I think IUP was pretty clearly the better team.
And can we talk about Irv Charles, by the way, since you're Mr. Penn State? I mean, he was a big recruit, right, at Penn State. He transfers to IUP and
7th year of college football. But yeah, he had an 85-yard touchdown that was just he looked like it was maybe an NFL player going against high school kids on that touchdown. So, and by the way, your brother said maybe he does get a look at the next level. I don't know if that means NFL, but maybe a guy that finds a way to play pro football after he wraps up at IUP. By the way, Seton Hill will have one more game upcoming that will be at Lock Haven. That should be a bounce-back opportunity, certainly against the Lock Haven team that has
only won once this year, right?
Yep. Yeah. The other Westmoreland County team, well, it's kind of similar. For St. Vincent, they fall to Westminster 41-6. And I see a lot of parallels between Seton Hill and St. Vincent, as the Bearcats are now 4-5. Westminster's a good team. They improved to 7-2. For St. Vincent, they really struggled over the last handful of years, winning 1 game, winning 2 games. Well, they've gotten to 4 wins. They have a chance to finish at 500. So really a lot of similarities to Seton Hill. That's a Westminster team that's really good. And now the Bearcats wrap up against Bethany, so maybe a chance to finish at 5-5. We've said it before, Aaron Smetanka does a great job. They have their quarterback in Brady Walker. Unfortunately for them, they just could not get it going against Westminster.
The unfortunate thing for both teams, Sean, if St. Vincent wins last week and Seton Hill wins last week, they have a chance for a winning record. And now, unfortunately, they do not. If Seton Hill would have taken care of business against Edinboro and Gannon, or at least one of those teams earlier this year, which they should have, they'd have a chance for a winning record, which would be the first time since, I guess, Coach Day's senior year. So that's unfortunate as well. But I think, looking at Seton Hill, if they can finish off the season with a win against Lock Haven, maybe that gets some good feelings going into the offseason, where they do return a lot of guys on defense, which has been their bread and butter, even though maybe not the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, anytime you can get a win heading into the offseason, because quite frankly, at the high school level, that rarely happens, but collegially it certainly is possible to kind of springboard all throughout the winter. Let's take a look at the top performers from high school football. And now this is much more abbreviated than normal, so we will have the top passer, rusher, and receiver from around the district, and then if there's anyone notable in Westmoreland County. Top passer, 260 yards for Logan Kushner of North Allegheny. He did it by completing just 8 passes, 8 of 13 for the Tigers QB to lead the way. Just one Westmoreland County quarterback cracked the list, Broderick Schreier of Ligonier Valley. He was 11 of 26 for 158 yards. Westmoreland County was better represented in terms of rushing, however. Top rusher was Shenango's C.J. Miller, 291 yards on the ground for him. Top performer from Westmoreland County, we talked about him before, Caden DiCaprio of the Burl Buccaneers. He went for 191 yards on the ground, 47 carries, just an incredible workload. Behind him, there was a couple of Mount Pleasant area Vikings, 170 yards for Robbie Labuda, and teammate Aaron Alexson went for 113. And the top receiver in the WPIAL from the first week of the playoffs, Peters Township's Jacob McCosco. We saw him against Penn Trafford. 6 catches, 194 yards to top the list. That'll do it from the playoff scores from the first week of the postseason, as well as the top performers. We'll take a break. When we come back, we will update the brackets 6A through 1A, and we have 3 interviews you want to listen to. John Ruane of Penn Trafford, Matt Humbert of Bell Vernon area, and from Mount Pleasant, Jason Fazekas. That's upcoming as we continue right here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron.
The all-new 2022 Mitsubishi Outlander at Sindel Mitsubishi. Drive one today for $239 a month, plus an industry-leading 10-year warranty. The all-new Outlander at Sindel Mitsubishi. Get thunderstruck.
We know speaking with your teen or your young adult about drugs and alcohol can be challenging, but is necessary. Remember to have a conversation, not a confrontation. Establish good communications, break through barriers, and be firm but loving. Here are some helpful tips. Choose a good place and time to chat. Talk with openness. Actively listen. Offer empathy and support. For more information, visit us online at wedacinc.org. Westmoreland Drug and Alcohol Commission. Prevention is key.
The Westmoreland Sports Network is available on social media. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and like our page on Facebook for the latest Westmoreland County sports news, WSN broadcast links, scores, game stories, videos, pictures, and much, much more. Also be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for archived interviews and broadcast highlights. The Westmoreland Sports Network is available whenever and however you want it.
And welcome back as we roll along here on our second playoff edition of Westmoreland on the Gridiron. Sean and Dan coming to you from Seton Hill University. Let's take a look at the updated brackets, and we'll run down 6A and 5A before we hear from head coach John Ruane of Penn Trafford. Not a lot for the 6A bracket. There was no Westmoreland County teams to begin with, but there was only one game last week. North Allegheny, the number 4 seed, defeats number 5 Cannon McMillan 49-26. So now we know the semifinals. Number 1 Mount Lebanon, which had a bye, will host number 4 North Allegheny. That will be Friday at 7. Same time Friday at 7, but it will be at Baldwin High School. Number 2 Pittsburgh Central Catholic welcomes number 3 Seneca Valley. And those teams also had byes in the quarterfinals. So there was just one game that took place in 6A. Kind of bizarre how that bracket has played out this year. Let's take a look at, by the way, I mentioned this last week, it's worth repeating. The 6A championship will be at Norwin High School, and that's a week earlier. That will be on November 20th, Saturday at 7 p.m. So anyone in Westmoreland County wants to go out and see a champion crowned, your opportunity will be at Norwin on November 20th.
So I guess going into the future, Sean, 6A, unless things change, will never be at Heinz Field, right?
Probably not.
Unless
and by the way,
changes.
It looks like 6A will be shrinking. I believe Baldwin will be dropping back down, so maybe Coach Sweeney will have a better opportunity to get some wins. But you have to wonder, man, it's going to be really tough to only have 7 teams in the highest classification.
I don't know what the solution is. I don't think there is one.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, if they're going to go by the state guidelines of having 6 different classifications, then I think it's.
I mean, that's the one solution that I've heard people saying, like, well, the WPIAL could combine 5A and 6A, and then once the state playoffs come, then you have to go into your classification. Maybe there's a solution there that you can figure out. But other than doing that, I don't know what else you can do. Yeah,
and I think when you have 7 teams potentially going forward, I don't even know that you want to have 5 teams make the playoffs. You'll probably go back to the 4-team bracket, right?
I mean, I would think.
If you get 5 out of 7 that get in, then I don't know what that really accomplishes. But again, Norwin and Hempfield area, they're going to be sticking around in this higher classification, and now you lose a team that you figure you probably have a chance to beat.
And I think a lot of people thought Pine would move up. But they're not. They're staying at 5A.
They are staying put.
Their enrollment says they don't have to move up. So.
Yep.
I mean, at least we think. I guess I wouldn't imagine Pine would just – I keep saying Pine. Pine Richland. I feel like I'm saying Fox, like Fox Chapel. I would imagine that they're going to stay at 5A, but I guess that's not official.
Yeah,
teams could move up if they want to play up.
It does not happen a ton. I know Roger Beidel at Ligonier said maybe geographically it makes sense for us to play in 3A because then you get Mount Pleasant, you get Southmoreland, you get York, you get Derry area.
Yeah.
They're not real close to teams in 2A. So we'll see how it all sorts out. But nonetheless, 6A, it's always very unique circumstances with those playoffs. We'll drop down to 5A, and we'll take a look at the games that were played last week. We mentioned Woodland Hills moving on. The number 9 seed Wolverines defeated Bethel Park, the number 8 seed, courtesy of a 27-23 final. As a result, Woody High will go against the top seed Moon Tigers, who earned that bye, and that will take place at 7:30 at Moon High School on Friday. Same side of the bracket, we mentioned Penn Hills, the number 5 seed, defeated Franklin Regional 38-6. So it's number 5 Penn Hills against number 4 Gateway. The Gators had a bye to the quarterfinals. That's always a fun matchup. A little bit of a local rivalry between Gateway and Penn Hills. 4 versus 5 should be a really good one to see who moves on to the semis. On the other side, Upper St. Clair was upset by Fox Chapel as the number 10 Foxes advanced 13-10, defeating the number 7 Panthers. As a result, it will be Fox Chapel area who goes against number 2 Penn Trafford as the Warriors had that first round bye. We'll hear from their head coach in just a second.
And Upper St. Clair was kind of a dark horse.
Yeah, I thought
for
that
some
was,
people. Yeah, they thought
that was a good team, and I was really surprised that it played out like it did. You don't want to necessarily root for anyone if you're Penn Trafford, because I've learned when you root for a team, it doesn't always work out.
Be careful what you wish for, that whole thing. But wow, what a victory for Fox Chapel.
Yeah, and that's a team that has a veteran coach in Tom Loughran, but that had not had a lot of success in recent years. So good to see the Foxes get that victory. Now, if you're Penn Trafford, you say, okay, regardless of who we're going to play, we take care of what we need to do, and we're going to be in good shape. So we'll see how it plays out on Friday. That is a 7 o'clock start, to the dismay of John Ruane. Loves the 7:30 games. You'll hear that in a second. And the other matchup that took place last week, number 11 Peters Township advances. I don't know that it was necessarily a big upset in my mind, because that was a really good Peters team, but based on the seeding, number 11 Peters Township, the Indians defeat the number 6 Indians, that being North Hills. That was a 33-28 victory. So Peters Township moves on as the number 11 seed. They will face number 3 Pine Richland, which also had a bye. That will be a 7 o'clock start time at Pine Richland. So again, you have Moon versus Woodland Hills, Gateway versus Penn Hills, Penn Trafford versus Fox Chapel, Pine Richland versus Peters Township. I look and see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably 6 teams out of these 8 that you could say really has a chance to go to the championship.
Isn't that what makes 5A fun?
Yeah.
5A lives up to the hype, man. I mean, you look at all the lower seeds, not all of them, but Woodland Hills, and it was an 8-9, but still a lower seed, and Woodland Hills, the 9 seed. Fox Chapel, the 10 seed, wins. The 11 seed Peters Township wins. It's like March Madness. You just don't know who's going to take it.
Yeah, and I think that number 11 seed Peters Township has a real chance to make a run, too. Now, you don't want to write off certainly Fox Chapel. I know John Ruane's not doing that, or Woodland Hills, but I think those are the 2 teams. It would be tough for me to see them going to the championship. Mm-hmm. But man, it is a really good bracket, especially now with 8 teams remaining. And a little bit of news about Penn Trafford, Flick. We are going to be doing that broadcast.
Yes, thanks to the Penn Trafford businesses, boosters, athletics, we are able to broadcast the PT game this week against Fox Chapel. And if the Warriors do beat Fox Chapel, likely the semifinal next week as well. We explained on the show last week that because the Trib has exclusive rights to all playoff games, we can't just broadcast like we normally do during the regular season. No choice. It's not our choice, unfortunately. We'd love to be able to do that. But because they have rights to the playoff games, we have to pay rights fees, and a lot of them. So we have to, in order to do that, we have to be able to work with the local businesses to get on board to sponsor these games. And that's why, unfortunately, we weren't able to broadcast any games last week. But this week we will have PT in Fox Chapel, and hopefully if the Warriors win, next week's semifinal. My question to you is, Sean, for the Final Four, for the semifinal, are they playing at the higher seed, or are they doing neutral field?
I believe it is a neutral field.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, that makes sense, but I know last year they didn't do that because of COVID, so I wasn't sure how they were going to handle things.
Don't hold me to that.
I definitely just put you on the spot right
there,
didn't
I believe it is TBA for that, regardless of if the number one team, Moon, advances. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be at Moon. Same with Penn Trafford. By the way, that championship will be held at Heinz Field. That will be Saturday, November 27th. Remember, there's 2 days at Heinz Field this year. Saturday, November 27th, 6 p.m. at Heinz Field. And certainly a lot of people around here hoping that Penn Trafford will be a team that is competing for that championship. Well, I had a chance to talk to their head coach, John Ruane. Let's now hear from the longtime veteran coach of the Warriors about this matchup against Fox Chapel. So, Coach, talk me through what your team did over the past week, not having to play when most of the other teams in the area were playing that first playoff game.
Yeah, it was definitely unique. Never had this before, so it was something that as coaches we had to kind of figure out. So what we did was Monday we reviewed the film from the previous game, and then we did some basic individual drills and fundamentals, and went through our screen periods and drills you can do against anybody. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday we did a little bit of a mix of Upper St. Clair stuff and Fox Chapel stuff, so we got a taste of each team. On Friday we put them through a pretty vigorous workout to simulate playing a game, so that their bodies were normal. So we got a lot of good stuff done. Unfortunately, anything we did with Upper St. Clair was wasted, but we knew that going in. One of the 2 practice sessions would be wasted. So, but we feel healthy. We took advantage of that, certainly, and we're ready to roll.
And I know that when you talk to basketball coaches, many of whom are familiar with having that first round bye, the benefit is you get healthier, you get to work through some things with practice. The drawback is a lot of times you hear coaches say that long layoff maybe hurt us. So I know you won't really know until Friday night, but do you see it as a positive, or do you see that there's real negatives that could come with this?
Yeah, it's both. We didn't like not playing Fridays, that's for sure. But like I said, it was kind of a get ourselves back into shape week and kind of fine tune and gives us a little bit longer to game plan as a coaching staff. So, yeah, like you said, we'll find out Friday, but pros and cons.
Your team got that bye because you finished really strong for the regular season. 8-2 record overall, including perfect 5-0 in Big East Conference play. And I know it was so rare to see your team lose consecutive games, but they came against pretty good teams, Bell Vernon area and then Peters Township. What did your team learn from those 2 losses that allowed you to get better from there on forward?
Well, they learned the value of not turning the football over and the value of not having penalties. 5A's been so crazy all year that it seems like whoever's the hottest team has all the hype. At that point of the year, we were 2-0, and I don't think anyone else was for some reason. And we were getting hype. We got ranked number 1, and that brought us back down to earth, which I thought maybe in hindsight is a good thing. Not that our kids have egos or anything like that, but, it just kind of got us, I think, refocused on what's important. Certainly credit the kids for working their butts off to make a lot of corrections and improve each week.
During your winning streak, the offense has been pretty good, with the exception of the Gateway game where you got just 15 points. But the defense has been really suffocating at times. You're coming off of a shutout win in your most recent game against Latrobe. You held Franklin Regional and Connellsville and Woodland Hills to a touchdown or less. What has been working so well on that side of the football?
I think that we've done a really good job of not giving up home runs. We kind of feel as though if teams have to march the ball for 12, 13 some plays, they might do it a few times, but to consistently do that's difficult in high school football. There's a penalty that'll pop up, there's a turnover, there's a mistake of some sort. The more a team has to run plays against us, the more chance for a mistake in our opinion. But collectively, I just think we've played really good team defense. I think everybody, all 11, are tackling well. We've had a really good pass rush. We only bring 3 guys pretty often. We have a good front 3. And our linebackers have cleaned a lot of stuff up. And then our secondary's improved every week. It's a inexperienced crew coming into the season, but now they are experienced, and they've gotten better each week.
Talking to John Ruane, the head coach for the Penn Trafford Warriors, before his team's quarterfinals matchup against Fox Chapel on Friday. One of the members of that secondary is also your starting quarterback in Carter Green. And I know that he made some mistakes with the football early in the season, maybe didn't pass it as well as he would have liked, but it seems like that's gotten cleaned up. How has his game evolved?
Yeah, Carter just put his head down and went right back to work. After a couple of games where, he certainly knows he's could have done some things differently, and I could have done a lot of things differently to help the kid too. So it's on all of us. And to his credit, he's really, really focused, and he's really improved his mechanics, and his decision making has become quicker. And he's just seeing things. With experience, you get to see all that stuff, and he's definitely done that. So I think he's taken tremendous strides. At the same time, he's still a great threat with the football in his hands to run it. And that's kind of what we want out of our quarterback. We've done that for quite a while now.
He's certainly a player who has stepped up as the season has moved along, and I'm sure you could mention a lot of people for this one, but who else has really improved their play from the beginning of the season up to this point?
Ooh, that's a long list. Yeah, I mean, we have kids that get a lot of recognition, but a kid like Jacob Haynes wasn't even a starter for us at the beginning of the season. Now he's a starting H for us, and he plays defensive end. He's made some humongous plays on both sides of the ball all season long. We've gotten a lot better at all positions, in my opinion, but Zach Tomasevich, a sophomore, who started a couple games, we made a move. He came back in 2 games later. He's playing like we expected him to play from the get-go now. He's a 6'5", 310-pound sophomore who probably could have had a slow start, played well, but we thought he could play better, and now he's come in. He's been really dominant and played great. There's a long list of kids. Seth Dunlap might be the most improved football player on our team, and he's like our jack of all trades. Kid that started at corner. We had an injury. We needed to move him to outside linebacker. He's really excelled at outside linebacker. He's playing very fast. He's trusting what he sees. He's making some big collisions for us, and he's a threat with the ball in his hands on offense. So, there's a lot of guys, just a couple that popped out of my head right there.
Let's focus now on your opponent for Friday night, Fox Chapel area. A team that, quite frankly, has been up and down at times this season. They still have a losing record, but they pulled off a pretty impressive victory at Upper St. Clair 13-10. So at least looking at their playoff success, what stands out about the Foxes?
Well, we went to that game Friday, and we saw them, and what stands out is they're a fast bunch, especially on their defense. They have some guys in the secondary that make a ton of tackles. Just when you think you have a big play, out of nowhere comes the backside safety to make a pretty good collision. But they're a physical bunch. They always are. Coach Loughran stresses that. We've played these guys. This will be the 3rd time in, I think, 5 years we've played them in the playoffs. And each time it's a physical group. We know they like to set the edge hard and try to force things into where they want it. So we have to have some things that are ready to accommodate that. But offensively, their quarterback got hurt. They put their best athlete at quarterback, and he ran the show against Upper St. Clair. He did a great job. But they have playmakers. Like I said, they're physical, and now they're believers, and that makes them dangerous.
You mentioned head coach Tom Loughran. He had a lot of success prior to coming to Fox Chapel, and it seems like finally he's gotten things on the right track with the Foxes. When you look at an opposing coach, especially once you get to the playoffs, do you kind of know what to expect from the team based on the coach himself?
Well, I mean, there's going to be some unexpected things, but I guess I look at it from my standpoint. We're going to do what we do best. That's what got us here, and that's what we should be doing, I think. There will always be a couple of wrinkles, but, ultimately, if you didn't believe in what you do, you wouldn't be there. So I'm sure they're going to do what they do best. They'll have a couple of surprises for us. But, yeah, I mean, I think he believes in what he does. He hasn't changed his defense much, a little bit here and there, but still the base scheme. And, their offense had to change a little bit with the new quarterback. But I don't know. I think they'll do what they do and have a couple of spices in there.
What are some of the biggest keys to have success against Fox Chapel on Friday?
Well, I think we've got to come out fast with the 2-week layoff. I think we've got to prove we're ready to play football right off the bat and not have a slow start. We did that a couple years ago against them. 4 years ago against them, we did not. They took it to us in the first half, and we had to play from behind. So we're certainly looking to have a fast start. We're certainly looking to eliminate penalties and turnovers. Those kill you in playoff games. Just keep up the pace with their athletes and get them to the ground however we possibly can. So, it's going to take a solid team defensive effort.
And lastly, you mentioned 5A has been so wide open all season. It really feels like just about any team remaining could potentially go the whole way. But you get the benefit of playing at home. How much does this mean to the community? How much excitement around Penn Trafford is there for this playoff game?
I hope a lot. We love playing at home. We have a great crowd. We have a great community support. We love it because we don't have to travel. We get to eat a normal time meal. We're playing at 7, which we hate. We love playing at 7:30. It's just a different, that half hour. I know it sounds so stupid, but it's a big deal to us. But nonetheless, that's the way it is, and we'll adapt to it. And, I think everyone's excited, especially after a week off, get the batteries recharged and get going. So we're looking forward to Friday.
John, thank you so much for taking the time. As always, good luck on Friday night and hopefully beyond.
Thank you.
That's John Ruane, the head coach of the Penn Trafford Warriors here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron.
The most incredible machine ever created didn't come with replacement parts. Until now. Rebuilding the human body takes skill, not just science. Some of the region's most accomplished orthopedists are right here at Excella Health. Our team of specialists are using non-surgical treatments, minimally invasive procedures, and the most sophisticated and complex surgical techniques to restore all aspects of human motion.
All right.
Whether you walk or fly. Orthopedics at Excella Health. Expert care begins here.
Welcome back to Westmoreland on the Gridiron. We appreciate, as always, John Ruane. I always enjoy talking to him, and he always says a lot of stuff. And again, it just stood out to me so much that, he doesn't know what to expect coming off of a bye because it really doesn't happen very much. Yeah. So he doesn't know if it's going to be a good thing or a bad thing. Well, I guess we'll find out on Friday. But this is something new that he has to get used to. And not playing at 7:30 drew his ire as well. And I would love to hear more. I should have asked him a follow-up of, well, what difference does it make? But I think they're very regimented with their schedule. And so
Creature of habit is Coach Ruane. He really is.
30 minutes could maybe make a difference. But I'll say this. That's not going to be an excuse. Penn Trafford will be a heavy favorite in that game. That doesn't mean that they're going to win, but I think you look at it with their ability, if they play the type of football that they're capable of, they should be moving on to the semis.
Well, and as I mentioned, I keep banging the drum that PT, I think, is playing its best football right now, and that's what you want to do. And it's not necessarily because, you look at the schedule, anybody can say that. Well, look, they've won, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 games in a row. Of course they're playing their best. But just to be able to watch them play, I've seen the improvement in the passing game on offense, and the defense continues to do what it has been doing. And Nate Schlesinger is just an absolute weapon in the kicking game, whether he's kicking off or kicking it through the field goal post. So, I'm really interested to see how they're going to handle this game, and coming after the bye, and then also going into next week. And you look at, I know we're going to talk about Bell Vernon here, but they kind of had a bye, if you will. They had an open spot on their schedule. They play McKeesport the next week, and they look pretty fresh doing it. So, the question is always, are you going to be rusty, or are you going to be hungry and fresh? PT playing at home, I have a feeling that they're going to be hungry and fresh.
And I think, honestly, it's more of a challenge for the coaches than the players, because it's up to the coaches to figure out how do we want to organize this week. And I know Coach Ruane said, Friday was pretty physical, almost as if they were pretending it was a game in terms of the physicality. But you have to map out how you prepare, because they're looking at 2 possible opponents. Throw out one of those days, which was ultimately for naught because they had a day of prep for Upper St. Clair. But I think that's where coaching really comes to the forefront and getting your team ready. And you mentioned Bell Vernon area is going to be facing the same thing as we look at now here, the 4A brackets. Last week, it was number 9 Newcastle who defeated number 8 Highlands as the Red Hurricane prevail 31-19. They advance to the quarterfinals, where it is number 1 seed Bell Vernon area who awaits. The Leopards will be playing at home at Weir Stadium, 7 o'clock start time. We'll get into that one in just a moment and hear from head coach Matt Humbert.
And for those that don't know, the Newcastle Red Hurricane, one of only a handful of teams with 700 wins in program history,
which is mind-blowing, because I think of them as a basketball school.
Yeah, right. I know
a lot of that is historic football success, but they've been pretty good recently. They have some guys that have gone on to play in the NFL. Malik Hooker and I believe Geno Stone's in the NFL now, so they've produced some really good talent. They always have a great basketball program, and it seems like some of their best basketball players also are terrific football players. So yeah, that's a good program year in and year out under Coach Coward. Same side of the bracket, Hampton survives Plum as the Talbots win 14-13. That was the number 4 seed Hampton Talbots eking out a victory against the number 13 Mustangs.
I would have loved to watch that game. I don't know how that happened. After watching what Hampton did, I know it's a different game, a different team, but watching what they did against Greensburg-Salem, and then you look at Salem and Plum. I mean, Greensburg-Salem probably should have won that game. It's all about matchups, but it's just crazy to see Hampton beats Plum by 1 point. Hampton hammers Greensburg-Salem, and Greensburg-Salem nearly beat Plum in the last game of the regular season.
But I will say this. There's something about being a little bit better of a team once you get to the postseason. We saw last year Plum had a run. They nearly knocked off Thomas Jefferson in the semifinals. So maybe some of those same players who were really good a year ago in the postseason, they knew what it took. Ultimately, they didn't get it done. But, yeah, that could have been one of the biggest upsets of them all. No upset in this one. Thomas Jefferson, the number 5 seed, defeats number 12 Indiana 41-0. So the Jaguars, we knew that they were going to be...
Speaking of a team that knows what it's doing in the playoffs.
We knew they were going to be good come postseason. Well, certainly if the first round was any indication, look out for the Jaguars. So that sets up number 4 Hampton, number 5 Thomas Jefferson. That will be at Hampton Friday at 7 o'clock. On the other side of the bracket, number 10 Laurel Highlands scores a little bit of an upset over number 7 Beaver Area, 28-27 in favor of the Mustangs. So the number 10 seed moves on. Remember, they have Rodney Gallagher, one of the best athletes in recent memory in the WPIAL. They will face number 2 Aliquippa, which had a bye. This one will be played, however, at Ambridge High School. They can't play it at the pit, so they'll go to Ambridge, 7 o'clock on Friday. And then on that same side of the bracket, number 6 Armstrong defeats number 11 Montour 27-16. So the Riverhawks move on. They have a prolific passing attack with Caden Olson. They will face number 3 McKeesport Area as the Tigers earned a first-round bye. That will be 7 o'clock at McKeesport. So again, Bell Vernon against Newcastle, Hampton at Thomas Jefferson, Aliquippa at Laurel Highlands, or against Laurel Highlands, I should say, and McKeesport against Armstrong. The championship, by the way, will be at Heinz Field Saturday, November 27th, 3 o'clock kickoff in that one. Well, I had the chance to talk to Matt Humbert, the head coach and the very successful head coach at that of the Bell Vernon area Leopards, about the bye, about his team's success, including Devin Whitlock and Quint Martin, and specifically about Newcastle. Let's now hear from Matt Humbert of Bell Vernon area. Matt, getting that bye, obviously it's a good thing to get the number 1 seed and to get some rest, but is it also potentially a little bit more difficult to get your players ready after a week off?
No, not at all. I mean, if you look at, we had a bye with the cancellation of the Uniontown game going into McKeesport, and if anything, that just really gave us an extra week of preparation, and really it gave us an extra week to get a little healthy. We were kind of nicked up going into that bye week, and that gave us an extra, almost 2 weeks to get some guys healthy, which we did. So it was nice having that bye week because, again, we had a couple little injuries, nothing season-ending, but, this week and last week really provided some kids to kind of heal up a little bit with some sprained ankles and things like that.
And one of the injuries that was a little scary earlier in the season was Quentin Martin. He went down against Thomas Jefferson, what we had thought could be potentially a serious injury. Luckily, he's been able to come back, and certainly he's been as good as ever. His ability to come back from that injury is really giving you such a great option with both he and Devin Whitlock. What has that meant to get him back and have him at full force?
Yeah, I mean, Quentin's just a different animal, and he's very complimentary to what Devin does. So to kind of have them back there, they're kind of like a dual or a two-headed monster. And then when you could sprinkle in some of our other skill kids with Olawant Raccoon and even Jetico, who filled in for Quentin when Quentin wasn't there. When you sprinkle those guys in with those two, it just makes you very multiple.
We've had the opportunity on the Westmoreland Sports Network to have 3 broadcasts of the Leopards this season against Penn Trafford, against Thomas Jefferson, and then against McKeesport to round out the season. And, man, every single time I think Devin Whitlock has done not just 1 but 2 or 3 spectacular things in those games. Does it ever amaze you what he's been able to do?
I want to say yes, but in the same token, kind of no, because, I'm used to seeing it. It's something that's just kind of second nature for us, and Devin does a great job for us and what he does, and it's something I've kind of grown accustomed to over his 2 previous years that he's been with us.
I know when I talked to him before the season, he really focused on how he could get this team over the hump by becoming a better leader, because he's always been a great player going back to his freshman year. So what have you seen in terms of his development as a leader and how that's helped your team?
Well, I think him just approaching every day, every practice like it needs to be approached, just with focus and with, his ability to just take the task at hand and run with it. I think something that's kind of neat and kind of separates him is just his calmness, his demeanor, never gets rattled. I think that's probably the biggest thing that wears off on other kids. I don't want to say it's nonchalantness, because that would kind of almost give it a negative connotation, which it's not. He's just a very calm, positive individual. He never wavers, and I think that kind of really, truthfully, has kind of affected the kids in a positive way, in terms of any little sprinkling of adversity, or any time something goes wrong, and that could be in a practice. If things aren't going the way that you want them to, or we're not getting some of the quality reps that we want to for some reason or another. His methodical just calmness of, hey, it'll eventually work out. I think that really truly has an effect on a lot of the other kids, and I think we've just been a calm, more positive team because of it.
Talking to Matt Humbert, the head coach for the Bell Vernon area Leopards, here on the special playoff edition of Westmoreland on the Gridiron. And not to diminish your regular season, because obviously it was very special, going 8-0, winning your conference, the Big 8 conference, and then getting the number 1 seed. But based on, I think, where this team has been in recent years, it seems like now it will really determine if this is a special season or not, because you're in the playoffs. How much pressure or how much anticipation do your players and your team have over the next few days?
I think it's more anticipation than anything. The pressure's there, obviously, because, we want to break the trend of, a semifinal appearance in outdoor, getting there and not being able to win it. We kind of want to get over that proverbial hump. But again, the pressure doesn't really see through. I think the kids are just eager and they're excited. And there's just that calm, positive approach. And like I said, alluded to with Devin, I think Devin kind of exuberates that. So we don't try to make things more than what they are. It is what it is, and you gotta focus on what you're doing week to week, day to day. And I think the kids are just kind of approaching everything practice to practice, realizing that there's an expiration date, and you don't want to let that expiration date come sooner than later. So I think the kids are anticipating a good showing on Friday, and they're eager to get after it.
Your team, Aliquippa, which is the number 2 seed, and number 3 McKeesport, all got byes to the quarterfinals. Every other team in this bracket was in action last week. So take me through how last week was for you. How much were you paying attention to the other games, and did you get a chance to see Highlands against Newcastle?
The only time we saw Highlands Newcastle was obviously after we got the film, when we did the exchange on the weekend. But going through last week, we kind of just looked at our side of the bracket and kind of said, hey, there's a few teams that run this, there's a few teams that ran that, and then that's kind of how we morphed our practice in terms of what we were prepping and whatnot. So we had a good week of practice. We finished with a nice practice on Friday with some good lifting and conditioning. So we were able to get to a couple little things that I think maybe you push aside just due to time constraints. I think that's another positive to having a bye week, is you can kind of get back to some fundamentals and not feel so rushed to prepare for that one opponent.
So you're going against Newcastle, the number 9 seed, which had, I guess, to an extent, a bit of an upset over Highlands, winning 31-19. So what do you know about the Red Hurricane?
Offensively, they're multiple, but they like to be spread. They like to go with a lot of 2x2 and 3x1 formations. The quarterback hood's a big kid that can run the ball, and they like throwing it. They can screen you, but then they can sting you as well in the passing game with some sucker plays and some trick plays. So, it's an offense that can definitely move the football. And then defensively, they're very big up front. They got some really big kids on that D line. Again, got some athletic kids in the secondary. I mean, if you look at Newcastle as a whole, it's always a good athletic school. I mean, they got some basketball players that know what it's like to play in big games. So, we know, and we've played them in 19 actually in the first round of playoffs. We know what type of opponent they are. So we got to be ready to roll.
And they also came from a very competitive Parkway Conference where Aliquippa obviously reigned supreme. And then every other team was pretty much playing one-score games week in and week out. When you look at their season. Is that something that maybe pays dividends, the fact that they were in so many competitive games in the conference each and every week?
Well, I think that always is helpful to a team. I mean, when you're winning close games and you're finding ways to win, I think that's always good because it kind of shows your kids, that there's ebbs and flows of a game and there's ups and downs. And sometimes, you have to navigate those waters and your kids can't get too high and they can't get too low. So I think if anything, them being competitive with the level of play that they have has probably made them a little even keel, in a team that doesn't get rattled.
What are the biggest keys for your team to have success and to move on to the semifinals?
We just got to be able to, prevent big splash plays in the passing game. I mean, they'll lull you asleep with some of their screen game, and then they'll hit up top. If you watch, their films, I mean, they've always hit a big or two big pass plays, either trick-wise or on some type of screen sucker that's resulted in 6 points. So we have to really limit those splash plays, and we have to really be fundamentally sound on what we're doing. We can't be overly aggressive. I think that's the key. We want to be very physical and we want to get after it, but we can't be overly aggressive because they have the ability to kind of sting you. And then offensively, we got to just be multiple. We got to be able to get the ball in the perimeter. We got to be able to stretch the ball laterally. And we got to put the ball in Devin and Quentin's hands.
And lastly, you're not only the head football coach, you're also the athletic director at Belle Vernon area, so I think you really have your hand on the pulse of the school district. What does it mean to have this home playoff game, and how much anticipation and excitement is there around the district for it?
One thing, if I'm speaking from a football standpoint, it's just one more opportunity for your seniors to get to play that last game. And, we're no stranger that we like to theme things, and we hold some of the things that we do, like every team does, very near and dear. So it's special for those guys to be able to try to protect them each one last time. But again, it's nice for our fans, our families, our parents. It's nice for our band and our cheerleaders. It's nice for everyone that partakes in that, because it's just, one more opportunity to play at James Weir Stadium. And for people that are associated with it, it's something that is very affectionately near and dear to us. And, I'd be hard-pressed to find, if it wasn't a parent, a kid, a band member that, just isn't eager to get that one more opportunity to go out and be able to engage in whatever role that is on a Friday night.
Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to do this, and good luck on Friday.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys, and I just want to say, the coverage that you had with us this year, I mean, it was probably some of the best that we've experienced over the past, 5-6 years at Belle Vernon. So I appreciate you guys and everything you've done.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to bring those games, and good luck. Hopefully the run will continue for the Leopards. That's Matt Humbert, the head coach for Belle Vernon area here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron.
You're always on the winning team with Bowser Chevrolet of Monroeville and Bowser Chevrolet Chippewa. Visit BowserChevrolet.com 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and get the power of Bowser in your hands. With the new Chevy vehicles arriving weekly, reserve yours now at Bowser Chevrolet. See the full lineup of Chevy cars, trucks, and SUVs at BowserChevrolet.com. Bowser Chevrolet, where the power of Bowser is yours.
At D'Annunzio's, our menu is extensive with an abundance of selections. The next best thing to being at one of our 3 locations is having our frozen food and jarred sauce in your own home. For our frozen food selections, we have wedding soup, pasta fagioli, lasagna, stuffed cheese rigatoni, ricotta cavatelli, and potato gnocchi. Our jarred sauces include the original, smooth, marinara, and tomato cream. These products can all be found at our restaurants or your local grocer.
Westmoreland County's broadcast home for high school sports, the Westmoreland Sports Network.
And we roll along here on the special playoff edition, part 2 of Westmoreland on the Gridiron. You can tune in every Wednesday, 7 p.m. By the way, we blasted out there. What's it on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook. We got all your bases covered for how you can watch Westmoreland on the Gridiron.
Yes, sir.
Whether it be live or archived. Let's now look at the 3A bracket, and this was the one that was heavy with Westmoreland County teams initially. Unfortunately, there's just one remaining. As we mentioned before, number 9 East Allegheny steamrolls the Ace-seeded Southmoreland Scotties, 36-11. As a result, the reward for East Allegheny, you get to play at number 1 Central Valley on Friday at 7. That's a Warriors team that, quite frankly, has just dominated the competition the last couple years. They might be even better this year. Also on that side of the bracket, number 5 Freeport area defeats Ambridge 34-6. Good to see the Bridgers just get to the playoffs. That's been a struggling program, but ultimately Freeport won that one pretty easily. They now advance to play number 4 Elizabeth Forward. The Warriors had a bye. I think that should be a really good matchup, EF against Freeport. That will take place Friday at 7 at Elizabeth Forward High School. Other side of the bracket, number 7 Keystone Oaks defeats number 10 South Allegheny. So it's Keystone Oaks, a 34-0 victor that moves on and will play number 2 North Catholic. The Trojans got a bye to the quarterfinals. That will take place at Mars Area High School Friday at 7. And as we mentioned before, Mount Pleasant area defeats Burrell 41-7. So the 6-seeded Vikings move on. Number 11 Burrell has its season come to a conclusion. And as a result, the Vikings will face number 3 Avonworth. That's an Antelopes team that got a bye to the quarterfinals. We'll hear from head coach Jason Fazekas momentarily. You look at this one, 1-2 for our local teams in the 3A bracket in the first week. But I think Mount Pleasant area, they're the type of team that you could see them having success. It's all about playing defense and running the football, I think, in the postseason. So Avonworth is probably a little bit more skilled, but the Vikings are the type of team that I think if they're doing their style of football, they can shorten the game a little bit and maybe even the playing field. So I think it should be, I don't want to say it's a toss-up because I think Avonworth should be probably favored and they will be at home, but I think it's one where you can say that the Vikings maybe have a shot.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, running the football and playing defense in the playoffs really plays. I mean, it's how teams can, win games and also shorten games and make things close at the end that, maybe wouldn't normally be close. And again, Mount Pleasant does those two things very well. I think the health of Tyler Reese is, certainly in question, and if he could play, that would certainly give the Vikings a shot in the arm. Not sure if he will be in the lineup or not for Coach Fazekas on Friday night.
Optimistic.
Yes. Okay.
Not a guarantee necessarily. And I'll say this, if you're Coach Fazekas, I don't know that you want to necessarily tip your hand right away either, right?
No, yeah, optimistic. Yeah, I'm sure he probably has a better idea than what he's saying, but I understand. You don't want Avonworth to know whether he's going to play or not. You want them to, find out, I guess, on the first play, offensive play for the Vikings. But, yeah, they need to be able to play that Viking football that they know how to play and be able to run the football effectively and as you mentioned, shorten the game and not give up big plays either to this Avonworth team.
Yeah, and you look at the Antelopes this season. Their 2 losses, a 3-point loss to Stowe Rocks. That's maybe the best team in 2A. And then they got blown out by Central Valley. But listen, everyone's gotten blown out by Central Valley. Other than that, they've been really good. They defeated Southside Beaver. By the way, that's the same team that we mentioned just defeated Ligonier Valley. And other than that, it was pretty lopsided against all of their opponents. So pretty good Antelopes team. They know what it takes. They've played in championships before, but I think Mount Pleasant area, you keep the football on the ground and you avoid the turnovers, the penalties, at least give themselves a chance. I had a chance to talk to Jason Fazekas after he scored his first career playoff victory.
Congratulations,
Coach. Jason Fazekas. He talked about that, what it meant for the program, and what's upcoming with Avonworth. Here now is Jason Fazekas of the Mount Pleasant area Vikings. Jason, I know that meant a lot to get that playoff victory. You've been able to get to the postseason the last few years, now to get a win. What does that mean for you personally and for this program as a whole?
Well, most important thing is good for the program. We always talk every year with the kids about some goals and everything that we have, and getting into the playoffs and trying to get some wins is always a big thing that we try to aim for. So to get that win, certainly was good for the program. So it was nice for the kids to be able to check something off, one of their goals.
And it came against a Burrell team that you defeated earlier in the season, but the Buccaneers had some momentum heading into the postseason. What really stood out about your team's performance on Friday?
I just think, the way some of our kids were running, and I thought our lines were playing pretty good on both sides of the ball. So I was just happy with the way they kind of the approach during that week and how they finished and played out the game.
And you were able to get that victory without the services of starting quarterback Tyler Reese, who was sidelined. Instead, it was Cole Chatfield who stepped in. What did you see from your young quarterback?
Well, first of all, we think Cole is going to be a good player for us. He has a lot of the attributes that you look for in a quarterback. The kid really loves Viking football, and he wants nothing more than to be a quarterback for the Vikings. So we have a lot of confidence in him. I thought he played a great game. I thought he did what we asked him to do, and I think he actually made a couple plays that I thought were really nice. So overall, I thought he did a great job for us.
Tip of the cap to Caden DiCaprio, the running back for the Burrell Buccaneers, had nearly 50 carries against your team, and yet you really limited them offensively, even though he was able to rack up the yards. What did you see on the defensive side that allowed you to, while yielding some yards to a talented running back, ultimately, for the most part, keep them out of the end zone?
Well, yeah, that's the key thing is, try not to let them score. Is ultimately what you want to do. Listen, we knew they were going to be able to run it a little bit and possess the ball. Because that's what their tape showed, and that they had a couple kids that were, pretty good. So, the key is just trying to, get them behind the sticks in certain situations, and I think that was one of our keys to, keeping them out of the end zone so much.
I know you were very excited about the ability to host a playoff game, thought that the community would come out and be very supportive. How did it play out in terms of the fans and the environment at Mount Pleasant on Friday?
Yeah, well, like we always tell the kids, going into that week, it's real nice when you don't have to get on a bus to play a game. And the environment that we have at our stadium, I think, is really one of the best places to play. So, yeah, it didn't let us down at all. We were really excited about it. Our student section was great all year, and I thought they did a great job supporting us. So, yeah, we had a great night there at Viking Stadium.
Talking to Jason Fazekas, head coach for the Mount Pleasant area Vikings, before his team's matchup against Avonworth in the quarterfinals of the 3A bracket. So before we get into the Antelope specifically, I mentioned that Tyler Reese was out. What's his outlook for Friday night?
Yeah, well, we're prepared to go in with everybody ready this week. So as we get closer to the week, we'll finalize that plan. But I think everything is pointing in the right direction for us to have everyone back.
And if he is able to play, even if he's not 100%, what does he provide? What are some of his best attributes offensively?
Well, I think with him is, he's just such a good athlete, and he gives you that big play potential. His running game really adds to the actual quarterback runs, and then the RPOs come off of the different things we do. So when he does make a playmaker, that's always a good thing to have on your side.
I know this Avonworth team, very accomplished. They have 8 wins on the season. They've been historically a strong program over the past decade or so. When you look at them, what's the first thing that jumps out?
Well, when we look at them, we see a good football team. We see a team that's coached really well. When you look at them from top to bottom, overall, they just appear to be a very solid, good football team. And they have guys up front, and they got some skilled kids. So it's going to be a pretty good challenge for us on Friday.
And you talk about the skill kids. Their quarterback, Nate Harper, is thrown for over 1,000 yards. And they also have a running back who's gone over 1,000 yards. So it seems like they can really attack you both through the air and on the ground. How do you try to combat those challenges?
Well, yeah, you're right. When I say they're a good team, those two certainly had to make them a good team, that's for sure. So what are you going to do? We're going to look and see what the film says, and we think we have a plan. We'll see if we can execute it. When you got really good kids like that, you just got to try to limit them the best that you can and not let them get too many, because they are going to make some plays. There's just no denying that. So we got to try to make pick our spots there and limit them the best that we can.
They had a bye in the first round, which means that they had last Friday off. And I know, talking to head coach John Ruane of Penn Trafford, he said, we'll find out if that was a good thing or a bad thing come Friday night, because it's rest versus rust. When you go against a team that is coming off of a bye, do you think that changes the complexion at all?
Honestly, I probably didn't even, think about that. I don't think it makes any difference with how we prepare, what we're going to try to do.
Your next golf outing, banquet party or shower. Manor Valley also offers league play and great membership rates. Tee times available. Call 724-744-4242. Visit ManorValleyGC.com.
When you're in pain or suffering from an injury, all you want is to get back on your feet, back to living your life. At East Suburban Sports Medicine Center, that's what we've done for 35 years. Our staff is skilled, experienced, and compassionate. Our facilities are modern and welcoming, and our focus is on you. So if you want to feel better, play better, and live better, call us today or visit one of our 6 offices.
East Suburban Sports Medicine. Take it from me, Bill Hillgrove. It's the best care, hands down.
If you had to file an insurance claim, would your insurance coverage score a touchdown, or would you be sacked for a financial loss? At Stevenson Insurance Associates, you'll call the right play when it comes to your insurance coverage. Don't fumble the opportunity to score points with our customer service and superior low-cost policies. You need to make the right call to Stevenson Insurance Associates at 724-832-9889.
Westmoreland County's broadcast home for high school sports, the Westmoreland Sports Network.
Welcome back to Westmoreland on the Gridiron. We thank Jason Fazekas of the Mount Pleasant area Vikings for talking about his team. And I'll tell you one thing. I know coaches, they're very busy. They have so much time dedicated towards preparation, towards actually practicing, that, maybe I get a little annoying. They have to talk to me. But I think that they're happy to talk to me at this time of year because it means that they won last week.
That they advanced, that they survived, that they're still playing. So.
Yes, I think Jason Fazekas as well as John Ruane and Matt Humbert, they would gladly find time to talk to me next week if all things go according to plan. Let's now look at the 2A and 1A brackets. Unfortunately, there were no Westmoreland County teams remaining in these classifications. Steel Valley, the number 1 seed, well, they looked like it. They defeated number 16 Best Center 49-14, so the Ironmen move in to the quarterfinals. They will be playing number 8 Southside Beaver. Remember, that's the team that defeated Ligonier Valley. It was Southside Beaver 34-14, knocking off the number 9 Rams. That quarterfinals matchup will take place at Steel Valley's Campbell Field Friday at 7 p.m. Same side of the bracket. Maybe the biggest upset in all of the WPIAL playoffs for the first week. Number 13, New Brighton in overtime. 21-20 knocks off number 4, Washington. And by the way, you mentioned Newcastle has 700-plus career wins in program history. Mm-hmm. Washington is one of the teams as well. We always can pencil the little Prexies into the postseason and have some success. That's why the upset by New Brighton may be even more shocking. So it'll be number 13, New Brighton, against number 5, Beaver Falls. No upset for the Tigers. They took care of business against Western Beaver, the number 12 seed, a 42-8 victory for Beaver Falls as they will host New Brighton. That will take place at Geneva College and Reeves Field. Other side of the bracket, number 2, Stowe Rocks made it look pretty easy against 15 Shadyside Academy, 61-8 in favor of the Vikings. They will face number 10 Mohawk as Mohawk defeated number 7 Chartiers Houston 34-12. So that quarterfinals matchup, it won't be at Stowe Rocks. It will be at North Hills High School, which I don't know if that's actually correct. North Hills plays their games at Martorelli. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that actually will be at North Hills High School or at Martorelli. Either way, Stowe Rocks will be playing as the home team in that one. Also on that side of the bracket, number 3 Laurel took care of business against McGuffey 41-2. That is a rare score to see for a final. That was a McGuffey team, again, that really high hopes heading into the season. Didn't quite work out for the Highlanders. Their season comes to an end. Number 3 Laurel will face number 6 Sarah Catholic. They defeat Neshannock, the number 11 seed, 61-21. So we had 2 teams put up 61 points in the playoffs. Maybe that's the drawback to having a 16-team bracket, right? You get some really lopsided ones potentially in the first round. But as we mentioned, we saw an upset as well with the 13-team moving on. So for the quarterfinals, number 1 Steel Valley against number 8 Southside Beaver, number 13 New Brighton against number 5 Beaver Falls, number 2 Stowe Rocks against number 10 Mohawk, and number 3 Laurel against number 6 Sarah Catholic. The championships will be on Friday, November 26th at Heinz Field. That's a 5 o'clock start time. I don't think I mentioned, by the way, the 3A championship will be the noon game on Saturday, November 27th at Heinz Field. So it'll be 5A, 4A, and 3A will take place on Saturday at Heinz Field. But in 2A, it will be Friday at 5 o'clock. And that brings us to the final bracket. That is the 1A classification. We mentioned before, unfortunately for Greensburg Central Catholic, with the tragedy, the season ends as well. As the Centurions fell to Our Lady of the Sacred Heart, the number 9 seed Chargers move on 28-8. They will face the number 1 seed, the Clairton Bears, who earned a bye, and they will host at Clairton High School Friday at 7 p.m. Same side of the bracket. This one was also an upset, although maybe not quite as surprising. Number 13 Springdale defeats number 4 West Green. As the Dynamos win convincingly 28-0, they move on to the quarterfinals, where they will face number 5 Rochester, as the Rams took care of business, defeating number 12 Mapletown by the score of 35-0. On the other side of the bracket, number 2 Cornell defeats number 15 Monessen 33-0, so the Greyhound season comes to an end. Awaiting Cornell will be number 7 Leechburg, as the Blue Devils defeated number 10 California 28-7. First time the Leechburgs in the playoffs since the 1980s, and they continue their run getting the victory. That matchup against number 2 Cornell will take place at North Allegheny High School on Friday at 7. And also on that same side of the bracket, number 3 Bishop Canevin easily defeats number 14 Burgettstown 49-6. And number 11 Shenango, a bit of an upset, defeating number 6 Carmichael's 31-13. So number 3 Bishop Canevin will host number 11 Shenango. That will take place at Keystone Oaks Dormont Stadium. And by the way, the Tri-County South 0-5, including the number 4 seed West Green. That's a much maligned conference, and unfortunately, it remains that way. So looking at the 1A bracket, it'll be number 1 Clairton against number 9 Our Lady of the Sacred Heart, number 13 Springdale against number 5 Rochester, number 2 Cornell against number 7 Leechburg, and number 3 Bishop Canevin against number 11 Shenango. Championship will be Friday, November 26, 2 o'clock kickoff at Heinz Field. That does it for the brackets. We're about to put a bow on this one, but Flick, any final
nice little bow.
Any final information that you want to convey to our listeners?
Well, don't forget to check out all of what we have content-wise on our website throughout the week. Our new website, we're so excited about it. It's still going to be new probably for the next couple of years. That's how I'm going to refer to it because we keep adding things to it. So look for some new additions as well. But Sean does a great job, as we mentioned, with the notebook every Monday. We have our Westmoreland alumni Q&As from all over Westmoreland County, not just for football, but for every sport.
For golf
this week.
Maybe
Palmer
one of the
Jackson. Am I giving it away?
Well, it's okay.
Okay, we're allowed to now.
Yeah. He's maybe the best golfer that's come through Westmoreland County since a guy named Arnold Palmer.
Yeah, that guy.
In the 1940s,
Yeah.
By the way, named for him. If you didn't
know. How cool
know.
is that? I actually did not know that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yep, named
So
for
that's
him.
the Q&A this week, so check that out right now. It's on our website. With the Friday previews that Sean does, our Recruiting Wednesday feature this week's actually a big one with Vinny Kilcarry, who just committed to Ohio State. He wrestles for Greater Latrobe, so that is going to be on our website at some point today. So just a whole lot of great content on the site. And, of course, again, the scores. This Friday night, we will have that Penn Trafford game for you, but we'll also have up-to-date scores as they happen on the Mount Pleasant game as well as the Bell Vernon game, too. So, check that out. And, of course, we have hockey that we started, Sean, so that's exciting.
Yep.
So we have a whole lot of stuff going on, including the WPIAL football playoffs on our website.
And Saturday, Seton Hill will be on the air as well.
Final game of the season, Griffins and Lockhaven. We'll have that for you at 11 o'clock for the pregame. Or wait, is it a 1 o'clock kickoff now at the top of my head?
It's a 1 o'clock kickoff.
Yeah, 12 o'clock. Noon 15, actually. 12:15 will be our airtime for
Go to the
Seton
website
Hill and
11
Lockhaven.
just in case and check out whatever we have in the meantime.
Yes,
we got plenty
that'll
of content.
lead you up to the pregame show there. And then before you know it, we're already talking about basketball with some of the coaches, and that should be exciting. I'm sure we'll have some previews for some of our local teams there. And Seton Hill women's basketball just started. They played in Montana last week.
And we missed Mark Katarski.
We did, unfortunately. They went 1-2, but they played some really good teams there, so it'll be interesting to see. They didn't play at all last year because of COVID. So,
yeah, and by the way, again, we kind of gloss over it. Everyone hopefully continues to stay safe because we never want to get to the point where a playoff game ends in a forfeit. I don't think that happened as far as I remember.
Anywhere else in the state did it happen? I'm not.
Yeah,
that I'm not sure of.
I mean,
it may have. I'm not sure.
I believe, if I'm correct, the Pittsburgh Riverhounds just had to forfeit their playoff
How
game
crazy
because
is that?
of
They had a
COVID.
really good year this year.
So that just serves as a reminder. We could talk about all these games, but you never really know until they kick it off. if the games are going to happen, because you want everyone to stay safe, and certainly we hope that continues this week and beyond. That'll do it for this edition of the Westmoreland on the Gridiron Playoffs Part 2. For my colleague Dan Flickinger, Sean Meyers signing off. Thank you so much for tuning in each and every Wednesday right here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron.
Good night.